Nobody was in your corner the way some people describe having someone in their corner. There was no mentor who saw something in you early and made the calls that opened the doors. No parent with the connections or the knowledge of how the system worked who could position you correctly before you knew what correct positioning meant. No insider who pulled you in before you had proven anything, simply because they believed what they saw. You have been working with what you could find from outside, piecing together understanding from sources that were not designed with your specific situation in mind, making decisions with incomplete information that the people who already had access to the right rooms made with complete information years before you arrived at the same decisions. You are not complaining about this. You made peace with the reality a long time ago, or you made a version of peace that functions like the real thing most of the time. But there is a specific moment. It arrives differently for different people, but it arrives for almost everyone in your position. When the absence of external support stops feeling like a neutral condition and starts feeling like evidence of something, not just about your circumstances, about your worth. The moment when the person who had the network closes the deal that you did not close, and the gap between your work and their outcome is not explainable by work alone, and you feel something that you refuse to call bitterness because bitterness is self-indulgent, but that feels close enough to bitterness that the distinction seems academic. That feeling is not weakness. It is accurate perception of a real asymmetry. What you do with that accurate perception is the only thing that is fully within your control. And Carl Jung spent his career studying exactly this, not the person who had everything arranged in their favor, but the person who had to individuate entirely from their own interior resources, because the external supports that make individuation easier for some people were simply not available. He called this the hero's journey without the guide, not the absence of a path, the necessity of finding it without being handed the map. Jung's insight about external support is less comforting than most people want it to be, so I will say it directly. The person who advances primarily through the support of others develops a specific dependency that the person who advances without it does not develop. Not because the supported person is weaker, because the dependency is built into the path. Every door that was opened by someone else's belief in you creates a psychological reliance on external endorsement that you then carry into every subsequent room. The person who opened every door themselves, through the specific, unglamorous, frequently humiliating process of figuring out how to open doors that were not designed to open for them, these build something different underneath the advancement. Not more talent, more structural confidence, the kind that does not require the room to confirm it because it was not produced by the room's confirmation in the first place. Jung called this the development of the individuated self, the person whose sense of direction comes from interior orientation rather than external validation. He was not romanticizing difficulty. He was documenting a specific psychological outcome. That difficulty, when navigated without collapsing into bitterness or performing into false resilience, consistently produces the person who had no one standing for them and advanced. Anyway, has a quality in their advancement that the person who was pulled through the right doors does not automatically have. They know the ground under their feet is real because they tested it themselves. That knowledge compounds in ways that borrowed confidence cannot. This does not make the absence of support a gift to be grateful for. It makes it a condition that, understood correctly, produces something that support alone cannot produce. The three things that actually move a person forward without external support are specific. None of them are motivational. The first is to stop using the absence of support as an explanation for where you are. Not because the absence is not real. It is real and it has cost you real things, but because the explanation, however accurate, organizes your attention toward the deficit rather than toward what is available. Every hour spent calculating what you would have achieved with the support you did not have is an hour, not spent on what you can build with what you do have. This is not toxic positivity. This is resource allocation. The person who advanced without support advanced by directing their attention away from the comparison and toward the specific, unglamorous daily work of moving forward in the conditions that actually exist. If you continue using the legitimate explanation as the primary frame through which you understand your position, you will be right about why you are where you are, and you will still be there in 5 years. The explanation does not move you. The work moves you. Use the explanation to understand the asymmetry. Then stop explaining and start building. The second thing is to identify the one person in your current life who has advanced further than you in a direction you want to go, and who did it under conditions closer to yours than to the conditions of people with with built-in access. Not the person who had the connections and got the opportunities, the person who did not have them and found another way through. That person's path is more relevant to your situation than any amount of general advice from people whose advancement was structurally different from yours. Ask them one specific question, not how they succeeded in general terms, but what the single thing was that moved them from the position you are in now to the position that came after it. One thing, specific, applicable to your actual situation. The answer may not be comfortable. It may require something you have been avoiding. It almost certainly will not be the answer you were hoping for. That discomfort is the signal that it is the right answer. The comfortable answers are the ones that have already failed to move you. The third thing is the one most people in your position resist longest. Ask for something you do not feel entitled to ask for. Not in the abstract, specifically. One request to one person for one thing that would actually change your trajectory if they said yes. The resistance to this is specific and recognizable. It comes from the belief, usually developed through experience of being overlooked, that asking for what you need from people in a position to help makes you vulnerable to a rejection that confirms the story you are most afraid is true about you. That the absence of support is not just circumstantial, but reflects something about your actual worth. Asking risks that story being confirmed, not asking guarantees that you remain in the position the story produces. The only path out of that particular trap runs through the ask. Jung described this as the moment the individuated self stops organizing its behavior around the fear of rejection and starts organizing it around the actual direction it is trying to go. One ask, one person, one thing that would matter. The answer does not have to be yes. The act of asking is what changes the psychological architecture, and the psychological architecture is what everything else is built on.